All right, so we're going to start our first Writing Wednesday by creating a 5-minute story. And the goal of the 5-minute story is to kind of be a brief preview of the writing assignment that we have coming up regarding your single story. So the goal today is to practice narrative writing, which is the genre that we'll be writing in for our upcoming assessment. Like I said, you'll work towards a 5-minute story today, and we're going to use this opportunity to work with the following story elements: setting, characterization, and conflict and plot events. So we're going to look at some models of various world authors to examine what expert writers do to establish these story elements, and then you'll be writing your own 5-minute story to put these elements in action. So before we begin, when you write your single story narrative, you'll be asked to limit your story to 10 minutes or less. The reasoning behind this is that we want to ensure high quality, rich description of a focused story, as opposed to simply telling about events that span a great deal of time. When you try to write a story that spans too much time, you end up just explaining events as opposed to writing a really rich narrative. So to begin to think that way, please decide on one of the following to write about today. You're going to pick the 5 most eventful minutes from either your summer break or the first day of school. So feel free to pause the screencast for a moment and kind of brainstorm about that. From either your summer break or the first day of school, what would be the 5 most eventful moments that might be worth telling a story about? So before you continue, I'd like you to outline the elements of your 5-minute story. So if you open up the handout for today's screencast, you'll see there's a place to outline your story, just kind of briefly naming the setting, where the time and place of your story, any character or characters involved, the conflict that you'll introduce, the key plot events, and then the resolution. How will your story end? So go ahead and take a minute to do that before you move on. So to make our Writing Wednesday as purposeful as possible, we'll often look at professional models or student models to help drive our own writing. So the first model we're going to take a look at is from a short story written by a Greek writer. And we're going to use his scene setting moment as a way to model how do effective writers establish setting. So what I'd love for you to do is pause the screencast, read out loud, or kind of in your head, the scene setting moment here. And then on your handout, there's a couple model evaluation questions. Specifically, what does the writer do successfully to establish setting? How are literary devices used? And here you really want to think about mood, because setting is a great place to establish your mood. And then what techniques will you try to use in your own story? So go ahead and read the excerpt and answer those questions in your handout. Okay, now we're ready to move on to element number 2, which is characterization. So similarly, we'll be reading an excerpt, this time from a writer in Bangladesh. Go ahead and read the excerpt and answer the model evaluation questions in your handout. All right, we'll be moving on now to conflict and plot events. These are the elements of your story that drive the story forward. This is what makes it a story versus just a descriptive moment. So here's a little bit of a larger excerpt to showcase some conflict and plot events that a writer from Zimbabwe uses to tell his story. So go ahead and read the excerpt aloud and then go back to your handout and use the model evaluation. All right, so now that we've looked at these 3 elements, I'm going to ask that you apply them to your own 5-minute story. So in that same handout that you've been typing in throughout the screencast, I'd like you to now craft your 5-minute story. You'll establish setting, introduce a character or 2, use conflict and plot to drive your story forward, and then we didn't look at a model for it, but of course you'll want to resolve your story. You'll want to kind of wrap it up and tell us how things turned out. Use those writing techniques that you identified in each model. So the ones that you were saying, these are some things that I could do in my own writing, now's your time to put those into practice. You're going to turn in your story, so when you're done writing at the end of class, or if you need some more time tonight, feel free to finish up. Please hit turn in Google Classroom so I can see your story, and we'll be using that for some activities coming up in class. Shoot for like a page minimum. This is not meant to be a huge assignment, just some practice writing. All right, so take the rest of the period to write your story and finish up tonight. Thanks so much.